Hey everybody, this is Cody Knight 22 here, and welcome to Cody Talks Fanfiction, episode number 14. And this week is going to be the standalone interview week, because I don't want to do the extra work. It was already scheduled to come out every 5 weeks. I just decided to throw in some bonus ones, and this time it's going to be with Elfenlied, author of the Vale series, which includes Snowy, Melting, and Autumn Vale, along with Choice, a Ruby College AU. Say hi, Elfen.
Hey, nice to hear you guys. Sorry for my weird voice. It's mildly pitch edited. Don't worry about that.
I feel like we've had really good practice at this part for some reason. It's
I know, right?
It's just all of it
This
flows.
has happened, by the way, like 3 times, everyone.
This is literally the third time that this
We
is
are
happening.
professionals.
We are ever so professionals that we fucked up twice. I will say this, Elfenlied actually holds currently, this is gold standard, all of you have to beat the most user-submitted questions, along with the first ever story-specific user-submitted question, and all of those compiled together are 30 questions. So,
Awesome.
let's just go straight into things. How did you first discover RWBY?
Well, I was introduced to Red vs. Blue when I was, like 10 years old. My brother came into my room and was like, "Hey, I got this box set for Red vs. Blue Season 2. And I was like, "What is that?" And it's this thing on the internet. We're gonna watch it. And we ended up watching Season 1 and 2, and it was this is way before YouTube existed, and I ended up big fan of the site up until Reconstruction, which was a fantastic season, my favorite. But the video editor was video player they had back then was so bad that I was unable to finish it, and big thing happened, and then I ended up just moving on and not paying attention to anything RT related until season 10, and came back, watched it all in one big marathon as the last episode came out. Watched the last episode. We're sitting there still in awe of how fantastic the writing for that episode in particular was, and then I realized there's like 5 or 6 more minutes to the video. And I'm like, oh, and then I saw it, and I was like, oh, they did. They're going to. And that was both awesome, surprising, and just a really, really bold decision from the company.
Just to be clear, the red trailer was what the thing was at the end of Red vs. Blue Season 10, as you just said, and then I saw it. So just for, some people don't watch Red vs. Blue. Exact same way as Dina Semery's found that. What was the first RWBY fanfiction story you remember reading?
I know it came out, or I started reading it halfway through RWBY coming out, because it was about the halfway point, and I was on 4chan wallpapers board because I always get a new wallpaper for something I really care about as it's coming to a close, and then I got tagged to a forum with a white rose in it, and then, well, I was like, well, this is now a thing in my life forever. And eventually I moved on to FF, and I don't know what the first one was, but the first one of any importance to me was a series of short stories by an author named, I think it's Love Links. She hasn't written anything about it for a very long time. And they're not the best, but they were fantastic little short stories. And I was like, oh, well, gotta do more. And that's where it went from there.
Alrighty. Yeah, that name, I've been on the fanfiction thing for a while. Fanfiction, that name does not sound familiar at all. I think that predates me. It's a while ago. So you went to a forum post. You got tagged in a forum post for White Rose, just to be...
Yes.
Okay. Wanted to be clear about that. What made you decide to write RWBY fanfiction?
It was, October Storm came out, and I read it, and I was like, well, that's so very good, and it managed to be so good that I felt bad about not writing. I've always been a big writer. Long before this, I was writing, not professionally, but for pay in high school. Needed an editor terribly, but I was getting paid for it. But I wanted to do it more on my own. Here's this thing that was awesome. I still to this day love October Storm, and I wanted to write more, and I was like, alright, I got time. I'm going to write this short story, put it out there, and maybe I'll write more short stories to follow it up, but it was never supposed to be what ended up being.
Vale.
Yeah.
Chapter 6 is going to happen, right?
Yeah.
Just one day it's going to happen. All right.
Well,
This is the first user submitted question from Rice Kyoze Blang. I just want to be clear.
that
I
would
don't.
be LazyKatze.
Oh, is that LazyKatze?
Yeah, that is LazyKatze.
Oh, okay. Scratch that. By the first user submitted question coming to LazyKatze, and is going to be, who is your favorite character?
My favorite character was, when the trailers were coming out, Yang, but that was quickly overcome mid-series by Weiss. I adore her. I think she's the most complicated character in terms of like a writing perspective of like what you're building, or can be the most complicated character. Uh, my personal opinion, the show has not done enough characterization for anyone to be that complicated, but you see these hints of what could be a really interesting character with a lot of um, issues between like how she was raised and moral upbringing, and her own sense of judgment, and just it came off to me as something that was very personal. I related to her a lot. She was a carbon copy of me in high school, and I she just was my favorite character. I adore her. Also, she's probably one of the better looking.
So actually, I edited down the 2 questions that I got from LazyKate. Because they were, the first one was, who's your favorite character and why is it Weiss? I edited it down because I'm just like, what does this person know? I was like, it'll be better if I found. Okay, apparently I should have. So I'll just read the next one. What is your favorite ship and why is it everything with Weiss? I believe the full question there.
I don't like everything with Weiss in it. I'm not a Freezerburn fan
Really?
at all. Yeah, it seems too sex based anytime anyone writes it,
Oh.
because there isn't anything else to go on between the two of them. Like there isn't a feeling of like natural connection, so you end up very physical relationships are written about more often than not. And I just don't like it. My other favorites though are White Rose. First, second is White Rose. Third is White Rose. Fourth is White Rose. Fifth is Monochrome though.
You have a good top 5. What you covered this earlier, a little bit of this earlier, but you can expand outside of the RWBY fanfiction universe. What stories did you draw inspiration from?
From FF specifically?
No, you can. It can transcend that. It can be fan fiction. It can be TV, movies, books, a newspaper. If you're into the daily, damn it, never mind.
I am. Wow. I read a lot, a lot. I drew inspiration back from I was a little kid, like in 3rd grade, and I read Tale of Two Cities, which is and all of the great classics, which I love. Books like Picture of Dorian Gray, plays by Arthur Miller, all fantastic works that I draw a lot of. I actually recently have been stealing the Arthur Miller thing of naming titles and chapters after the best or most meaningful things said in the chapter, which I jacked from Arthur Miller's plays. And if you are a fan of playwriting, go read those. And Shakespeare, because he writes some plays that are not great, but all their speeches in the plays are fantastic. He writes these great, great speeches, which I am horrifyingly trying to do the same thing too much because I love speech writing. More contemporary things is I take a lot of inspiration from a anime writer named Gen. He wrote Fate Zero, Psychopaths, Madoka Magica, Gargantia, a VN that is the most horrifying thing I've ever seen called Sayano Uta, and his style of being subtle with dark things makes them all the more creepy. And like just showing a little and enough of things and treating your audience with a sense of maturity and like they can understand a complex idea without it being shoved into their mouth is fantastic. And I take a lot of inspiration from that. From the fanfiction world, October Storm, easily. I stole her Weiss in a lot of respects. because I think it is the best one that has ever been written, possibly better than the show's interpretation, maybe. Shh, nobody ever said that. Um, and I've Curry's story, White Rose of Vermilion, was a bit of an influence and the deciding factor for Autumn Vale existing. So much so that I asked for permission to connect Autumn Vale and White Rose of Vermilion, so in Autumn Vale's canon, White Rose of Vermilion existed. So there's a bunch of references to it, and it's really just me being childish. And so yeah, the first and foremost of being an excellent writer, I think, is reading and viewing media and interacting with media and being like, I need to learn every single thing about it from this, because it's going to be the best teacher you're going to ever have.
I will say this: I've read every single one of your stories. Never got the chance to start on Autumn Vale. Never
It's all right.
didn't get the chance. So I'm coming.
That is a response I hear a lot.
But except it is actually on my list. It's up next on my list. But after I finish this, I dedicated myself so much to reading Choice that there's like every single story decided to update like earlier this week. Like most of the stories that I follow. So I'm like, wonderful. What's your favorite story excluding your own?
It's my favorite story of excluding my own on fanfiction.net.
Yes.
I think that this is pretty clear that it's October Storm, though honorable mention from White Rose of Vermilion, and I like Layers of Ice a lot. The dialogue in it is really well written, even if it's not the most atmospheric. White Rose of Vermilion, though, if you want to learn about writing with atmosphere and making really atmospheric scenes, read that and analyze like every tool he uses. It's fantastic. It is what he is best at. Dialogue, you can learn more from like Layers of Ice, and mixing the two of them to make a perfect cocktail is October Storm right there.
Is it shaken, not stirred?
Shake everything.
Hate myself.
Perfect.
Yeah, the atmosphere to White Rose of Vermilion is great, because I just remember when 13 came out. I think it was chapter 12 actually came out, and I just like followed it, and I remember started reading it and almost immediately feeling dread. I'm like, my brain remembers the story.
I get physically ill whenever a new release comes out for it. I just feel a little sick and with anxiety, and that is perfect. That is exactly what I should get.
All right. There was a bit of a cutout there. How do you deal with negative criticism?
How do I deal with negative criticism? The first thing with negative criticism is you have to sit back and go like, okay, you're gonna take this personal. It's gonna happen. It's gonna just now stop and think, what is what they said, and are they right? And then when you go yes or no, when you say no, the thing is they're not entirely wrong. Whenever somebody says anything that's negative, they might be telling you a symptom, and the actual problem is something else. Like a criticism that someone once voiced to me in Melting Vale is Blake in one scene in her own head uses a very derisive phrase to refer to Weiss, and they were like, I don't understand why this happened, and there was like, this line shouldn't be in there, and the thing was, it wasn't the line's fault. It was that I didn't preface it. I didn't make it expose internally why she would be under so much emotional pressure to justify it, and I didn't contextualize it. So a lot of the times with negative criticism, you got to consider if it's wrong, what is causing this symptom, because it's almost always something has to be there. But occasionally it is just they don't like this style. Someone who doesn't like romance stories isn't going to like a romance story, for example.
Mm-hmm. That's a good way to approach it. That's a really good way to approach negative criticism, is even if they're wrong, to take a look at what it is, how close they got.
Mm-hmm.
What is your personal favorite part about your stories? So you could go like story by story. I really loved this in Snowy Vale. I really loved this. Or just like, okay, there was this one moment particular in Choice that really stood out to me above everything else. You take either route that you would like on this one.
I will prefer to go story by story on this one.
Yep.
In Snowy Vale, I love how I kind of captured who the characters were and how they communicated in their interpersonal relationships. A lot of people talked about these very naturally funny moments that don't feel necessarily forced, that feel connected and kind of interesting. And I really like them, like the scene where Ruby and Blake are talking by themselves in the room because everyone else is on vacation, and people talk about that line all the time. And it's a great line, and I just love it. It felt very natural. I liked just how easy it was to write. Um, with MV, my favorite thing, it's not my favorite thing about the story, but it's personally, I would probably say it's just I like how I've evolved things, and I like the freedom of having a bigger, ambitious thing. But the personal favorite response I ever got, this is slightly out of the question, is people telling me Zawarzi is their favorite character. And that happens a lot. He's a lot of people's favorite character, and it's just like, that's the most cool thing you can say to me, is that this character that you have no reason to like, because he's not from anything. He was just a character I needed for a scene. You adore him, and that's awesome. Like, frozenhikki, author of October Storm, thinks Vera, who is a character in one scene, is the best character of MV, and I adore that. I just adore those compliments. Choice is, I love how I've made, or in my opinion, I've done my best to make the mundane seem fantastical in location, descriptions of the environments, and what Ruby is seeing and feeling is fantastical, but it's in the mundane, it's in the real world, it's a place I've been. Everything in there is something I've actually seen, because I went to a town where all that is based off of, several. And that was ripped straight out of October Storm too. With Autumn Vale, it's that the audience for it is very, very small, but they are super passionate. Anyone who seems to read it and keep with it, it is their favorite thing. That is like readers like TCR and Half Blind Otaku and stuff like that, who are fantastic reviewers. They just adore it, and they are super loyal, and that's really cool.
Alrighty. You have a lot of stories to cover. You're the first person I think I've done a multi-story interview based off of. Or you are the first person. Are you surprised by the success of your stories?
I heard you voice that you were worried that you would never get an interesting answer from this question.
I would never get a no to this question.
Yes. And I'm gonna throw you an interesting one. SV? No, there was no. It was way beyond the scope of my original idea. It was just a 2 a.m. I'm gonna stay awake evening. But MV is exactly as successful as I pictured it being. Choice is exactly as successful as I pictured it being. And Autumn Vale is just a little less successful than I expected it being. I didn't expect it to be very successful at all. I expected it to do a little better than this. But that's fine.
Well, there we go. I never thought that had happened. Everybody's always like, nah, I'm totally surprised. Shouldn't be at the top.
Oh, no, I shouldn't be at the top. But I'm not at the top, so.
Next question. What do you do to get ready to write?
What do I do to get ready to write? I put myself in a situation where I'm not going to be bothered by anybody. Because when I write for long stretches. I can't pick it up and put it down. I'm very much a get into character writer, which is weird because you hear actors about doing that, but I actually really need to do that for characters. So I go, all right, I'm going to listen exclusively to music that is the mood of the character. I'm going to try to think about things as the character, and so I can give their POV, their chapter, even though it's not entirely first person, it's third person with a first person taste, give it this flavor of that character. So everything about it. So Ruby has more repetitive phrasing and rhythmic phrasing. Weiss's her prose is much more judgmental of people non-physically, but more mentally. And Blake's is far more existential and metaphor heavy. And so listen to that music, keep into that mood, probably wait till it's really late at night and nobody's going to bother me. And that's how I write, and that's how I prepare for it. Other than that, Google Docs.
What are your general thoughts on your stories? So that could be, just so you know, if you just want to go over like all of them in a row or whatever, then yes, that'll work. If you want to go,
I'll go in order of release.
oh,
Snowy Vale SV. I'm proud of how well it did, and I know a lot of people really like it. But compared to things I did afterwards, it is very difficult for me to look at. It's filled with mistakes and just me not knowing certain things that I know now, that I just cannot go back and look at it. I just cannot bear to. I'm so embarrassed. Even though I know a lot of people really care about it, and that's the most important thing. If it mattered to you, then it's what matters to you. And I'm glad a lot of people really liked it. Uh, but it's good. It's not as there are other things that are better, and then there are things less better that go above it. So I don't care about the standing so much. It's just personally I think it's good. I'm proud of it as a finished, really long piece of work. But it's not my favorite thing. MV, I'm kind of really proud of it and scared of it too. It's more ambitious, and I'm always afraid it'll go off the hinges and go too far in a direction that I didn't intend for it to do. But I'm overall proud of it, and I like what I've done with it so far. Uh, AV, I think, is most problematic out of them. There's some things I was less proud of, but I've kept in. There's things that I really like that I think are the best. I think it's done some work with characters, especially original characters that are fantastic. But I see a lot of problems with it things I wish I hadn't done and things that I wish I could have changed. But I don't agree with going back and editing a piece of work and getting rid of what somebody else cared about and what somebody else experienced and pretending that didn't happen. And with Choice, I'm really genuinely proud of it. I really like Choice. I think it's pretty well written. I don't think it's perfect. I don't think it's deserving of some sort of award, but I really like it. It's a story that I would like to read, and that's the most important thing. If I can achieve something that I would enjoy, bam, done. I think that's great.
it's not perfect, not yet, but it's still leagues better than you.
Yep.
All right. What is one thing that you wish that you could change about your stories looking back on it now? You can, if there's a story that you're just like, I don't really know what I'd change, then you can just skip over that. So,
No, there's pretty clear things. I think about this a lot. With SV, there needs to be more prose and more description. And more atmosphere. There's especially like the nightclub scene. The first person that pointed this out, and it changed my writing ever since, was frozenhikki. She was talking about how the club scene, a club is the most atmospheric place she can think of, and it has no atmosphere to it. And that was like so wrong, and I would regret it. Also, not knowing some grammar rules that I just like understanding fully how dialogue tags work and how to comma space dialogues, and that was also something I needed to change and is unchanged. MV, the thing I regret most, I would say maybe some choices of what I put in and cut. A lot of stuff, especially in the first act of MV, got cut. There's a lot of conversations that were half written that aren't in there that I kind of wish were. And because I think it gave more context for a lot of people, but it would have dragged the story on, and I don't know how to make it work, but I wish I had the talent to do that, or maybe the time. With AV, there's specifically something that I handled very early on that was supposed to be subtle, and then it has a payoff for it in the 9th chapter, with the opening with a character named Lucia, who was never seen but spoken of a lot. I felt like she should have been spoken of a lot more, because it is so fundamental to very specific characters, including two of the most important, Charles and Azura, who until recently barely spoke of her. It was meant to be a more subtle build-up, but in the end I made it too subtle, so it seems as if this super significant thing was just a one-off plot device, and it was not at all. With Choice, I don't have any regrets with Choice.
No regrets.
So far, it's not long enough.
Yeah.
I will before it's over, trust me.
No regrets. I love Where the Millers. This next question comes to us from Knives for Cash.
Ooh, Knives left me a question. That's a shocker.
Yeah, Knives has left 2 questions now, I think, actually. What have you learned from your stories?
What have I learned from my stories? I've learned a lot. I've learned how to be a much better writer. I've learned how to write way better prose, way more atmospheric prose. I've learned certain things about grammar thanks to, strangely enough, Germans that have become friends of mine, and LazyKatze, who is one of my editors. I've met friends, and man, I can't even begin to explain how much I learned from all this, and everything about writing I learned to get a little bit better. That'd be all I can think of.
You actually mentioned some things earlier that atmospheric and whatnot, so you kind of answered part of this question before, but yeah, there's probably a lot that you would have to cover if you wanted to go fully into depth on that story or on the not that story on that question. Next question comes to us from Noble Meta, who of course guest appeared on Cody Talks Fanfiction in episode number 8. Noble Meta speaks. How do you manage your time with 3 stories ongoing and a personal life?
3 stories ongoing. I don't sleep a lot. This was actually a much more complicated question back when SV was going out. Luckily, when SV was going on and I was trying to put out 2 to 3 chapters a week, I had a significant other, and that was for a short while, and that was even more hectic. And I also go to college and have a very active social life. I don't sleep much. That's been my solution. But prioritizing time and not wasting 24 hours in a day is so much time, and people don't even realize how you can put that away just by, I'm not going to play as much video games, or I'm not going to watch as many YouTube videos, or I'm not going to watch as many anime, and making those specific sacrifices. You can make so much time out of your day. So just living each day, deciding to do something productive and putting efforts into it, you can make time. No matter who you are, you can make time to do something if you really want it. And I made time for 3 stories.
So what you're saying is playing video games, watching YouTube videos, watching anime does not count as being productive.
It depends on what you're doing it for. If you're doing it to study and learn from it, absolutely you're being productive. If you're just sitting there and it's really important for relaxation and I really value it, but it is not a super productive use of time, because if you're not trying to learn something from it or trying to make sure to steady yourself, because you need some time to relax. But yeah, no, watching too much of it and playing too much is wasting your time. But I should preface that with too much.
So Smite for 6 hours, yay or nay?
Nay.
Damn it. This is a really interesting question. This once again comes to us from Noble Meta. If you could work on a story with any author, who would it be with and why? Now let's make this, I'm going to add a little bit more to this. Fan fiction and original work. So original author would be included in there.
If I could work with an original author,
yeah,
right now, I would pick Gen, the writer of Madoka and Fate Zero and stuff like that. Purely because I could shake his hand and learn as much as I could from him. There's no way I will ever, well, not ever, but no way currently and probably ever that I will compare to him and thus be useful to him at all. But being able to be there and learn from him would be worth embarrassing myself horribly. Now, it's going to make the next one, the fanfiction one, even worse, because I'm not going to pick frozenhikki, because I would be too embarrassed about how bad I was, even though we're friends. And there's just the competency level is too... It's too close while too far. So if I was to say like do a collab where I did half the chapters and they did half the chapters, the difference between them would be so apparent that I just could not. The person that comes to mind that out of the fanfiction community that I feel like I could and would enjoy and may or may not have had this very conversation with would be LazyKatze, who's a friend of mine, or maybe A-rav or whatnot, because our skill levels are more comparable, and thus it would not be horribly one-sided. I'm also friends with them, so it's very easy to do that.
Just want to say, first of all, you could fetch his coffee or something. Get his coffee. You could get his, shine his shoes.
That's pretty much how the Gen relationship would have worked out.
And just the other thing on there, I am surprised you didn't say frozenhikki, but I will say this real fast. Hi, A-rav. How's it going? With the six. Wait. Oh yeah, I phrased this question wrong. It's not actually in the right spot. I forgot to move it. With the success of Snowy and Melting Vale, along with Choice, are you at all disappointed with where Autumn Vale is in comparison to your other stories?
This is a complicated relationship because I have a complicated relationship with Autumn Vale. I am both incredibly proud of it and embarrassed of it at the same time. It is my nerdy, really, really nerdy love child of a story. It is the most just. I did stuff that I thought was cool, and I talked about time periods and thought about backstory and came up with fantasy stuff and history for the RWBY world. That was just me thinking about it and being like, that's kind of awesome, and I want to do that. And it's kind of nerdy in a history way, too, because all of it is history references. But so I'm a little embarrassed of it, but at the same time, I think it's actually all right, and I kind of wish more people would give it a try. But at the same time, it's really not for everyone. It's just I recommend give it a look if you want, but it is a niche story. It's well written, I'd like to think, but it is niche. So if you want to give it a shot, go ahead and give it a shot. But I'm not going to be surprised if the follows don't just come pouring in. And so no, I would say I'm not. Again, I wish maybe it had a bit of a more community purely because the reviews would really help shape it more and know what I'm doing right and wrong. But I'm not so focused on the numbers, especially with that one. It is mostly a love child, and it is mostly me trying to have fun with RWBY stuff, and that's the most important thing when you're writing fan fiction. If you're not having fun, you're wasting your time and not doing great. You should never make it all work. So no, I'm not horribly disappointed, but I'm maybe a little.
Solid answer. Niche community. I mean, that's, just do what I do. Just build an empire off a niche community. Where did the original concept for the Vale series start, and where did the idea for Choice come from?
The Vale series, like I said with Snowy Vale, it was never meant to be a big thing, ever. It was supposed to be a series of short. You can look in the author's notes of the first chapter, and it's still there. It was supposed to be a series of very kind of unrelated short stories that were just like, when I can get around to it, when I can do it. And then very quickly, I was like, this is becoming a thing I enjoy too much. I'm going to make it a cohesive story. And it was, when it became cohesive and this was going to be a thing, was literally the chapter where Weiss goes back to her family house. And and as soon as the confession happened, I knew the ending of Melting Vale, if that gives you any idea. I knew the ending of the future sequel thing, because I realized Snowy Vale will not... its casing is too small for the kind of story that MV is. It's too ambitious, and I would be tricking people who are in it for this kind of like more pure, fluffy love story that is not that complex and is just about these two people meeting together, and this much more complicated, filled with intrigue and personal family strife that Melting Vale is, and I felt like it would be tricking an audience. So I knew right there. I knew the ending and beginning of Melting Vale, and I knew Unveil and Melting Vale's ending. It was written in the Google Doc for Snowy Vale. So it just came to me. The story is just sort of just like, I was like, what if it was really cool if I could end it on this thing, or what if this opening would be really cool with like doing this thing, and then there's a bunch of other stuff that was just super cool that I can't talk about because it's nowhere near finished. And if you don't believe me, when MV ends or when AV ends, go read the last chapter of Snowy Vale, and it references the entire plot of both.
Well, I know what I'm reading for the next hour. Also, Choice. Where did the idea for Choice come from?
Choice came out of me talking to LazyKatze on Skype, and I was talking about how there's a lot of high school AUs, but I don't see as many Choice AUs, and I know they're more popular on Tumblr, but I don't see them, and I'm in college, and specifically university, and I really like university life. I think it makes for a much more interesting story. There's more things you can cover. And also I find that a lot of times high school AUs are really, they make themselves purposely mundane, where it's too much like, oh, I can't be at all fantastical with the environment and location. It has to be middle America, standard high school, boring, like the your teacher is boring joke is made in every high school AU ever. And every show about high school and everything. So I was like, all right, I'm going to take my memories from when I lived in Spain, and I'm going to create this much more real. It's all these things can happen. All these things are real people, but fantastical, interesting journey there. And with it's an all English story, but it has a few bits of Spanish, and it's in Spain, where American girl goes there because of family troubles, and it has this kind of fantastical but still mundane adventure through college with this foreign student program, which is based off of two friends of mine who went to Japan. The entire student program is based off of their adventures there. And I was talking to LazyKatze about the idea of like doing something not mundane, and she was like, well, you're just going to have to do it. And I'm like, really? I have two other stories. And she's just like, well, give up on them and write this. It's like, I'm not going to do that, but if, Kat, you're willing to be my editor and help me, in the sense that she looks at my plans of everything that's going to happen and goes, oh, this sounds good, or, well, maybe you need to flesh this out more, or whatnot. I will totally write this, and I'll love it. And she's like, great, and she's been a big part of that process. So I always try to leave a good amount of credit for her, because she did more than it. She did come up with some of the ideas. She didn't handwrite anything in it, but she did help with the ideas, and she did check everything, and she knows how everything's going to end, where it begins, and that was the idea for it. Sorry, I talk too much.
It's honestly, it's fine. If I were ever to be on an interview for my own show, this video would be like 4 hours long. It's totally fine. Plus, that's kind of the whole point of this, to get all this information out there. I mean, this is stuff that probably isn't previously referenced in anywhere before. As far as I know, I'm the only person doing this. And there could be other people doing this, but I'm the only one getting authors on and interviewing. So this information probably doesn't exist before. So ramble on as much as you'd like. I don't think
I think it's really cool. I like hearing authors talk about their processes and stuff. So your interviews are my favorite part, and you do a fantastic job of being a very Radio 4 host in vocal and presentation wise. So thank you for having me on.
Yeah, it's fun. Big love fest.
Yeah.
This one comes to us from, and you referenced them earlier, and they left a review on YouTube. I will say this, left a review on YouTube. So it came down as Northern Riflemen, I believe, but they left it under like a different name. They line and then a different name under TCR, so that you'll be getting credit as
the
TCR.
Canadian Riflemen.
Is it the Canadian Riflemen? Okay.
Yeah.
How did Azura Thrym come about, and on a scale of yes to no, how much do you love her?
I'll go with yes. I do love her. For to give well, MV fans have just met her. She's the new teacher, and uh, that showed up in the chapter before last, and has had like two lines of dialogue in the new chapter. She's this new, really old teacher. That is a Faunus woman, who is a little snarky and is a friend of Ruby's, um, from her being a little kid. She is one of the foremost important characters in AV, and is leagues the most popular. Um, and she is one of my all-time favorites to write. She's just charming. She's hilarious. What she came out of is, and this is part of my OC writing processes. When I think of, all right, I need a character. I need a character to do this thing. Is there a character that already exists in the RWBY universe that fills this role, that I can change slightly to fill this role? Because I don't want to write an OC where a character already exists to perform the same thing. Even if this isn't necessarily apparent to the audience at the time that they're brought in. And I needed in MV a Faunus teacher, for reasons that will be apparent to you later. And so I came up with this woman from AV that was just barely a part of it in the original document. She wasn't important at all. But I was like, all right, I like this design. She was aesthetically based off of Arturius from Dark Souls, in terms of her armor stylings and her weapon stylings, which is also based on Berserk from, or Gant from Berserk, but I more know the Dark Souls design. And I incorporated some elements of a character that is much more snarky. A lot of people have accused her of very lovingly being kind of like the Hound from Game of Thrones, and how she talks, and because I made her scarred in the face. But I also designed her to be this character who's really powerful, really important, really smart, and I just thought it would be cool for, especially in the RWBY universe, to have a character who's awesome and isn't attractive physically, and who people like and enjoy and love, but it's not because of their physical beauty, because she's described as being kind of scarred in the face and not the most attractive looking woman. She has kind of canine-ish teeth and all these things. And it was this idea of like, I want a character who is not necessarily above the fact that she isn't the super most attractive. She's aware of it. She makes jokes about it, but is so much more than that, but is part of that. Isn't just ignoring that they're people that aren't super attractive, but are just as important and have just as much of a role, and then at the same time not ignoring that about them entirely. Because I don't know that I always felt like in media there isn't enough of that, and so that came into the design, and then the personality and all these things that just rolled into this fantastic character that is one of my favorite original characters that I have written in this. Her and Zoarzi are my two favorite by a mile.
Moving on now, after another big chunk of that was cut out. In Snowy Vale, something seemed missing from that story. Do you agree with this statement, and what do you think it was?
I don't necessarily. This is one of those statements where I talked about where it's a symptom, not the problem. It's not that it was missing something. It is that it outlived the original containment. Like, the first early chapters make sense for a series of short stories that aren't meant to be that important. You're not meant to think about them much longer than they're there, and you walk away. And then suddenly at the end, you have this continuous arc where everything about the last chapter you're supposed to remember because it's important for this next chapter. And it outlived its original containment. It outlived what the original intended goal was. And that creates this feeling when you're at the end of it that this style of writing has not been consistent throughout. So the beginning feels not right for the ending. It's not a horrible thing, but it was just, I think it has the source in me writing what was originally going to be unrelated short stories into, I'm not going to use the word epic, but this kind of adventure that these characters end up kind of emotionally going on, that is the end of SV and the entirety of MV.
That is actually, I like that answer. So continuity. So continuity is.
Content.
I
You
guess.
need to take his style consistency.
I guess what was missing was continuity. So I'm making
Yeah.
sure that I'm right at the end of the day. That's what's important. I'm the host. No, that actually does make a lot of sense. And I will say this: the reason that this is a question is because this is me talking to the audience. Elfin and I did talk a little bit, not too much, on Skype. And I did say, you know, one of my biggest complaints with Snowy Vale, or after you watched Cody Talks Fanfiction with Melting Vale, which came out last week, as far as the audience is concerned. And it was, I lost my train of thought. But I said that something was missing, and now there wasn't there in Melting Vale. And you said, you know, Snowy Vale just wasn't intended to go that far. I'm like, that makes a lot of sense, because what was missing was kind of this feeling that everything was being brought together correctly, and it went from one thing to the other in a very kind of awkward way. So after saying that, that's what does make sense. This is me going back on that. There's my actual complaint for episode 7, so I'll cut that in.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
I don't even have the file anymore, so I couldn't do it if I wanted to. At what point in Snowy Vale did you decide to make it a series?
I've brushed on this. It was going to be a full story as soon as the chapter before I decided that Weiss was going to go see her family. It became a series during the club scene, during the confession. Because from that point on, it all came to me at once. I knew the beginning and end of MV and AV, and I was starting to fill in the pieces of what would come, and I was actually really excited to write it as I was writing those last few chapters. So I would say right during the confession, I knew that I was going to make this into a series, and not because it was popular, but because I really wanted to write it, and I wanted to keep doing it, and SV as a containment, as a thing, wasn't going to be able to hold it all. And like I've said in the intro to every single one of the Vale series stories, and I think it's one of the biggest misconceptions, is they are standalone. If you want to go back and read it, it will give you more context. Each one gives more context to the other. But they are standalone. They just hint at each other, and they are in the same universe, but you don't need one to understand the other.
Weiss's father is a complete jackass. How much fun is he to write?
I watched your review, and I actually disagree. I think he is not a complete jackass. He is a product of his time and his upbringing and his cultural sense. He earnestly seems to want the best, and I tried to put chapters in it like there's very subtle things he does. One of the things about the Vale series that is one of the most important concepts is this idea of focus on what people do, not so much what they say and what they think. Her father was arguing with the rest of the family over her inheritance rights, and basically alienated the rest of the Schnee family to ensure that Weiss would be the heir, despite the rumors about her, and how if she did have a relationship with RWBY, this brought into question whether they can keep this dynasty-like succession that they've been trying to keep from, I assume because Vale is a kingdom and it seems to be a constitutional monarchy, that at least at some point it was a feudal society, and it seems to hold true with how the Schnees talk about a kind of like almost dynasty aesthetic of this person is the heir and so forth. And you see him argue, and then there's a scene where Weiss basically explains their relationship, where he goes, well, I have a lot of problems with this, and none of them are the ones you fully understand. Now, I'm going to do my best to try to make sure you're happy, but you're going to have to do these things because that's what we all have to sacrifice to do. I'm going to make them as easy for you as possible. And he talks about trying to find her husband that is also gay so that they could have a child and then be done with it and could be happy and see whoever they want. He heckles her, or not heckles her, but treats her poorly about Ruby, not because she's dating Ruby, but because she wasn't subtle about it. She couldn't manage to keep it hidden. And she kind of went behind his back on it. And also because he, for reasons unknown to viewers, dislikes Ruby's family. Unless you read AV, but that's just a small thing that he says in MV, but to understand why is you have to go to AV for it. Once again, those like hidden connections. But is he fun to write? Absolutely. He was based on a lot of different characters that I try to take inspiration from. Red vs. Blue's director is one of the inspirations that for a more Rooster Teeth like connection. Some people have not incorrectly compared him to both Stannis and Charles, or not Charles Stance's interpretation of Tywin Lannister and Stannis Baratheon from the books specifically, and those are not entirely incorrect, but I like to think I take from it from a lot of different places. And you get this character who is hard as stone, but there's a lot of reasons for him to be, and he is mostly fully and completely concerned about Weiss's well-being, whether she can exist in this world with as many threats as there are to someone who runs the Shinee family and be the person that she is. Because he's not afraid for himself, because he's powerful, he's rich, people respect him. He's afraid for her future. And also, you making him yell without yelling is cool. Like, one of the things I decided about this character is he was never going to scream, and he was never going to hit Weiss, no matter what. But he was still going to be a complete and total jerk, while being pretty just level-headed and just cutting, without ever being physically abusive.
Well, that was, that actually, alright, well... Next question was a really good idea. I'm just going to go ahead and skip it, though. As
what was it?
It was. I will say this. Now I guess we're back down to 30 questions, or back because since I kind of went up one on accident. Next question was going to be: do you plan to make Weiss's father any better, or will he be a kind of antagonist in the story? Because you answered it that this is really.
Oh, is he an antagonist in the story? He is an antagonist in the story.
Yeah, he's very antagonistic in this story.
Just absolutely
causing a lot of issues. But. Definitely, though, I said, do you plan to make him any better? And apparently the answer is no, he's going to keep doing on what he's doing. But once again, I don't care about spoilers. I'm interviewing an author. If you don't I'm interviewing an author. If you don't know this by now, if you haven't finished the series, get out. And it's just with the thing that came up with Blake, where he kind of talked to Blake. That is the point that I think that is made me make my final decision on him, that I really do not view him as a character that is more, how do I phrase this? I want to say more talk than words, but that's not right. Or more talk than action, but that's not right.
Yeah.
Equal counterbalance of action and talk, except neither of them are going in the correct direction.
You are wondering a very important question of why did he just let that go? Why did he agree in that Blake conversation? It seems like it's too meek, right? Is that what you're saying?
Well, when I did the thing, I was just like, that was one of my complaints about the story. It was just too smooth. It wrapped up too smoothly.
Yeah, you did notice that.
And that was intentional.
I'm not gonna. I'll just leave it at it. I knew too before it came out.
Alrighty. Well, damn it. Yeah, that's.
I'm not saying anything about it. I'm just saying. I'm not. I noticed it before the sentences were on the page. But that is a common complaint, but a thing you just gotta accept if you want to do things where you build up ideas. Sometimes they're not going to be apparent to the audience, and you just have to be okay with that. And luckily, most of my audience, who felt that way, decided to just stick around and see what's going to happen.
Why do I make this series? One of my
very
very few complaints was just like completely thrown out the window. Damn it! So good at this.
Well, what you might be saying is, why didn't I hint enough that it was not intentional? Or maybe that it was intentional, or maybe that there's an alternative side to this.
To me, honestly, that scene felt like no matter what no matter what it was, whether or not it was done intentionally by Weiss's father, whether or not it was done intentionally for another plot reason, Zoisa, whatever, whoever finally influenced it seemed too easy to me, because if it was Weiss's father just caved in that easily, to me it's kind of like, okay, he caved in and now it's, kind of getting on his way. That doesn't seem very much like his personality. And same reason, different effect. If it was done intentionally by him, it also does not fit in with his personality, because that would be too easy, and you would think that somebody would. It just would seem too easy. Only Blake knows, and Blake doesn't know Weiss's father that well. But it just, to me though, that one moment in time though, where he says yes, Weiss can go back to Beacon, it's problematic because it is not has more problems, no matter what, kind of looking towards the future. No matter what, there should have been somewhat more resistance from his end, because it would have played into the character better.
The conversation went a lot longer in the original, and this is one of my minor regrets with MB. I don't see, that's another example of the symptom being different than the problem. The problem was that I didn't show the struggle, and the way I was pointing it is that it just happened. And it wasn't that it happened that's the problem, it's the symptom of it. I should have made the conversation longer, and it was longer. There was actually going to be a much longer negotiation period, but it was just too long. It made the chapter's pacing really slow, and I opted to cut it. Instead, I should have probably made it more graceful.
Yeah.
That's probably universally people's least favorite chapter, except for LazyKatze likes that chapter. Might be just because she edited it. But I don't think it's that terrible, and I think maybe I just needed to show people more stuff. A lot of people have problems with, say, how Blake talked about a few things, especially Weiss and the Schnee family, and then you gotta consider, like, these are the people she has been raised to also hate. And there's even a conversation in the very beginning of the chapter about how the story is just as black and white from her perspective as it is from Weiss's. That this is the family of people that everything is their fault. That life is so terrible. And she even acknowledges that there's probably more to it than that, but she's overly emotional at that time, and so that explains the moment where, to be more explicit about it, she in her head refers to Weiss as a racist bitch, even if it is a bit more casual in that moment. But if I could rewrite that chapter, probably would. But I don't agree with going back and changing chapters wholesale after it's been so long, when people, like, it is to me like saying that, oh, people, your opinions no longer exist, I'm going to hide everything under a rug. Like, this is the story that came out. I had my chance to edit it. I had my chance to try to fix it. And I didn't.
Thank you. Finally, somebody agrees with me on this show.
As long as it's not spelling and grammar. You can edit spelling and grammar. You just can't edit content, in my opinion. And that's just me. I'm not saying people are bad that do it. It's just how I feel.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I honestly, I do 100% agree with that. Spelling and grammar, damn it, it's the sole reason I don't go back and edit chapters. No, that all of that makes sense to me. So I guess, I don't know, do we count that as answering question number 30 or what? Or wait, question number 30.
Yeah, I'd say that totally counts as answering.
Do you have any plans for any external conflict in Melting Vale? I count Weiss's issue with her father as being an internal problem because it is done within the family. I mean, like Torchwick, Cinder, Creatures of Grimm, stuff like that. Just throwing out examples.
Specifically, I haven't touched. It is mentioned that because the Vale series is theoretically supposed to take place after the core series, so Cinder is referenced as having been and being a major problem. That is face to the world, that is RWBY. But I haven't included them because I think the next season will make them the most important antagonist, and I don't want to stamp on that tread. However, there will totally be problems specifically with the White Fang and external conflict that occurs. I'm not the writer that's gonna brutalize. I'm not here in this particular story to kill the cast and have this horribly brutal confrontation. But there will be fighting. There will be stuff. This next arc is entitled Wolves Old and New, but for reasons. And it has a lot to do with the White Fang, which is a very external conflict. And then the third arc is probably about half of it will be external conflict. But it's not going to be a full-on bloody nightmare. I'm not that writer. Or at least I'm not that writer in this. If you want nightmares that are bloody and battles, you got AV for that, because that takes place during a wartime. This will be a lot more... Writing tends to be more interesting when it's talking about people-to-people conflicts. Physical conflicts are harder to write, and they aren't that visceral or entertaining, which is why you see even like the best writers make the physical conflict short, because it's got to be interesting and the events have to be interesting, but you cannot spend too much time on it. But there are little fights, and there will be stuff, and there will be characters who have physically mildly painful things happen to them, but there's not going to be like a friggin' torture scene that people seem to be such fans of in the fan fiction community.
I see what you did there.
I'm just not that writer, and some people are out there doing it way better. So yes, there will be external conflict, but it's not going to be that intense.
Okay. Who is your favorite OC that you've created?
This is a horrifying tie. I love Zawarzi and Azura. Zawarzi's in both AV and MV, but not in AV yet. He's a late AV character. But and Azura's primarily an AV character, but both of them are fantastic. There's something to the way the plot for Zawarzi is. I just needed there to be a character that works for the Shani family. And his thing was he's going to be this terrifying, horrible person who is never not polite about everything. He's always super polite and super nice, but he just does things that are bad. And he's a bad person even if you don't know it yet. But he's very loyal and very just this fun to write. He's very much based off of the picture Dorian Gray. I forget his name, Lord Henry, where he's just this really funny kind of charmingly bad person. It's nowhere near as good as a picture of Dorian Gray is, but I'm not going to step up to the Oscar Wilde territory. He's infinitely better than me, but I did model it off of Lord Henry, who is who, if you read Picture Dorian Gray, is the reason you read the book. And then Azura is just fun, and she was way more important than she was originally meaning to be, purely because I really like her. And I just don't think there's a lot of characters like her in the RWBY series. And hopefully MV fans will like her more as things go on. And understand why in the reviews the AV readers were ecstatic to see her in MV, if only to prove that she'll survive AV.
Spoiler alert.
But so it's a tie between the two of them. I don't count Weiss's father. My interpretation is unique, but he is a character that exists, and it's based entirely on the things said about him. So I don't consider that wholly OC.
Yeah.
Though
I get.
He's pretty alright.
I get that. I consider, this is just like throwing in there, I consider there to be OC interpretations. I mean, because Weiss's father, we don't know much about. So anybody that does any story involving him, he becomes like an OC. He becomes like an OC. Yeah. Anybody that does a story involving Velvet, Summer Rose, Cinder, Mercury,
Yeah.
Emerald, like any of them, we don't know much about them, so they become original characters. No matter they, in a way, to themselves. The first mention that I ever had of Cinder was she was still Crimson, as far as we were concerned. So that's going back, and she was really original back then. She's already way different than what I thought back then. Now, but it's just kind of like they become original characters in the interpretation. So I actually would have counted if you had said Weiss's father. I would have counted it.
I like to make a distinction because I do make a point to, whenever I can, use characters that do exist, or at least are hinted at existing. In AV, for example, both Crow and Summer Rose exist and are principal characters throughout this series. And I just try to use as many characters that we know for certain existed, like General Lagoon exists in AV, and he's a character in it. Because it is best to do stuff people are more comfortable with, and to do stuff we know, and just I feel better about that in fan fiction writing. But I get where the distinction comes from. He is very interpretive.
100% interpretive, really, almost 95. Let's go 95.
We get that he's an aggressive father.
Yeah. Which OC outside of Autumn Vale do you think has/will have the biggest impact on your stories?
Outside of Autumn Vale, Wheeler, the most important impact.
So I guess that's Choice and MV.
Choice, I'm trying to make... There's plenty of characters to choose from, and I can interpret them freely now, because it's a college AU. So there's going to be, aside from Yang's family, there are, like, no OCs that will have any dialogue. Because I don't have to. I can just take any character. I can be like, all right, Neptune, you're now a character here, and I can make you do anything because it's a AU. But with MV, there are specifically, I guess you could say, who will have the most effect? Everything if you want to call it Weiss's father as existing, everything that happens requires him existing, and it also requires a character who will show up only in the last, 3 chapters. But it's the head of the White Fang.
Okay. Spoiler alert.
Well, I've mentioned the White Fang in the summer.
Ah, fuck.
And so they're very important in the sense that everything that happens is because of the two of them. And so, but who just will have the most speaking lines and stuff they do? It's probably... either Weiss's father or Zawarzi, because he's a very important character and he does a lot of stuff. But just most of it is behind the scenes. And yeah, no, I try to space them out evenly and not do more than I need to with them.
That makes sense to me. You already answered this question. I got to when I realized that you kind of did answer this question already. I'll say it anyways, and if there's anything you'd like to elaborate on from earlier. Autumn Vale is OC-centered. What was the thought process behind attacking such a different style of story? But you kind of did say it earlier, that it's like... I can't remember. You had to say guilty pleasure, like the really nerdy version of it to create this.
It was... I really liked the idea of what was this Faunus rebellion that was the Rights Revolution or the Faunus War, depending on who says it. Usually they're human or Faunus. And I liked it. I thought, okay, this is really cool. And then I wanted to also think about, what is Vale the kingdom? It's called this kingdom, but it clearly has a very modern structure. What was its turnaround from this feudal society into this? And I made them one thing, and then I was like, I'm going to take the War of Roses, the First World War, and the Jacobite rebellions, and turn them into one thing, and then make this story be why war is kind of not great, and then have all the stuff and talk about racism in a different light, in this way of it being more about using people in any way you want than it is ever actually about hating them. It's just giving yourself an excuse to abuse them. And that was a big theme with it. It was all these things, and I wanted to do it, and there was just no characters alive at the time, besides maybe Crow and Summer, and that was assuming it happened within about 40 years. of the events of RWBY. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to put these in it, and then I'm going to make a bunch of OCs and try to make as many OCs as possible directly connected to descendants in the series. And we know the Schnee family is there, so I'm going to use them. We know General Lagoon exists, so I'm going to use them. We know there has to be a leader of the Faunus, so I'm going to use them. They mention the island of Menagerie as a concept, and I use that. So it spent a lot of time on the wiki compiling everything we know about it. The amount of times I've looked at maps of Remnant and tried to parse out exactly where everything is terrible, and I regret doing it because it was silly, but I created this thing that I was able to like, and I just wanted to explore it. I wanted to talk about it, and needed OCs to do it. I didn't have a choice. Unless I wanted to make it an AU, and I just didn't. It would have served no purpose if I just made all the characters back for this. So that was it. It was really just an OC-focused story was the side effect of a Faunus War-focused story.
All right. Yeah, okay. They definitely did have more to elaborate on. So, yeah, right back up to the amount of questions. Interesting. You mentioned all this stuff about Faunus. And I don't believe, unless I misread the story, and I don't believe that I did, why are there no Faunus in Choice?
Because it's our world. It's our real world. And there aren't any. I do try to give them mild traits of it, like Blake still has amber eyes. But the countries are real. Spain is a real place. America's talked about. The countries that come from are real. All these places are real, and I felt it would detract from that by making them Faunus. But I did try to hint at it. There's people describe Blake as cat-like, and tried to make Velvet a bit more shy because she's based off a rabbit. And so I just tried to think about that kind of stuff and be like, alright, you're going to be more than a girl with adorable bunny ears. You're also going to be an astrophysics student, because I'm an astrophysics student, and that's cool. And there needs to be more women in science anyways, because science is cool, and it's too singular gendered.
And I need woman to meet.
Yep. And so that was the reason there's no Faunus in Choice. But speaking of Faunus, I thought of something crazy the other day. This is mildly off topic, but you should keep it because it's kind of interesting. I want to plant this in people's head. So, in the RWBY world, we know of Faunus existing with animal-like traits on people. And I thought, alright, we can tell them because they have the animal's ears, we have their level fur, and they have their tail. Sun is the best example for this idea. He has human ears because monkeys don't have ears different from humans. And he has a tail because monkeys have tail. And he has slightly more hair because monkeys have slightly more hair. What if humans are actually grade 8 Faunus, who have no tails, have no non-human ears, and don't have as much hair as monkeys?
That is great. That is a great idea.
It just occurred to me 3 or 4 days ago.
All right, well, I know that there are at least a couple of authors that watch this series. Somebody, please, for the love of God, explore this idea. That is a great idea. Or maybe you could explore it. I'm just kidding. You have 3 stories going on right now. I don't wish a 4th one on you.
Yeah. And I don't want to do it because I don't think that's going to be canon at all. But it was one of those weird, if you think about it, maybe they don't even realize it. Maybe it's this human elitism. Maybe they're just the tribe of Faunus that was superior in terms of they geographically were at a better location and they had the materials necessary to become the advanced civilization, because that's really all that changes which civilization is superior to the others, where it's located, and what materials they have present, and they were able to develop the technology to suppress other species and create this artificial divide between them. Maybe I'll explore that. Maybe I haven't decided. I will be honest, that's a pretty great idea, and I sincerely hope that somebody here
listening to this takes that idea and runs with it. I don't know how many authors that will watch
It's for free. You guys can have it.
It is for free. It's a freebie. I will say right now, I won't be writing it. That is a little bit too complicated for my poor mind. And now down to the final two questions, and I think that you know what both of these are where both of these are going to be. But of course, I have to prep them in the same way. Authors, we get asked a lot of questions. Generally, some of them are pretty similar. So first is, what is the question that you get asked the most out of all of them?
I don't get asked a lot of questions. I either get a lot of praise, a lot of criticism, or a lot of people shouting at me about the one question I do get asked. And, first question is, can you edit and beta my story? And I almost always say yes. And a lot of them are usually very young authors. And one of the things, if you're ever interested in learning how to write, do fan fiction. It's easy. Fan fiction community is generally not very judgmental, and you're not going to be great at the beginning. Nobody's great at anything at the beginning. It's a great place to learn practice. Just take criticism as it should be, and you'll have a fantastic time. But I do a lot of that, and I usually can't stay with their story and be like, I'm going to edit every single chapter. I'm going to give you a taste of what and I don't want to say the word leagues, because I'm barely intermediate at writing at all. But, one of the older members of the community that has had more time to practice just in life. I'm like 20 years old. I've had time to help usually the younger writers. But the actual question I get asked a lot is, because of something I did in SV and hint at in MV, will Bumblebee be part of the story of the Vale series? And my generic answer is, I don't know yet. And my actual answer is, I do know yet. I'm not going to say anything.
Fuck.
I'm not going to tell anyone anything. Originally, I know for certain that I was like, I don't think I'm going to do it, because SV originally wasn't that big. Mm-hmm. But there was that one-off chapter where Blake talks about her feelings. And I wanted to touch on the idea of, and have kind of a chapter to be like a raise the glass to people that, for whatever reason, maybe because it's orientation, maybe it's because of livelihood, maybe it's for 1,000 reasons, two people who would have worked out great together, would have been great together, just either can't or weren't able to, or just luck wasn't on their side, and just 1,000 things couldn't make it right. And almost be like, I acknowledge that you guys and gals exist, and I'm sorry that happened, and this is a chapter for all those people, and shout out to them. But I don't know whether I'll go back on. I do know whether I will go back on that or not. But I do like telling people nothing, because it's funny.
It's very funny.
And it drives people insane.
The only thing more funny than not telling people anything is just very, very in-depth breaking down that one scene, because as a writer, you break down every single scene in your mind, and very, very in-depth breaking down that one scene to show exactly what it is, and then saying nothing, because then they go even more crazy. I'm a total prick when I do that. I do that all the time. People be like, oh my god, why did this happen? And I'm like, well, circumstances of the scene are this, and this could have happened, things could have gone this way, and they didn't, and you'll have to wait and see what's next. Just get as long as possible.
I think I've done that enough with talking about the Blake and what's his father chapter.
It's so funny.
I talked about that chapter at great length, and I'm so sorry to people who had to listen through that, and I know it was boring, and I'm really sorry. But that is something that is interesting. I hope you guys and gals enjoy this conversation. It's anyways, go on.
If you enjoyed this conversation, subscribe to my channel. Just gonna last question. And I think that you know that this one is coming, but one of the questions I think that as an author, and you did bring this up, we get asked the most, that authors that are higher up there should say they do get asked the most. Can you read through this story, or what advice do you have for me? I get anywhere from 50 to 100 views on this. Not going to ask you to read 50 to 100 stories. So, what is the biggest piece of advice that you can give aspiring authors?
First and foremost, and every author that is ever been good at giving advice, and I think this has been the advice given by every author on your show, and it's the most important truth: is write a bunch, just do it. Don't don't be scared by the fact that you're not going to be great at the beginning, that you're going to struggle. It's going to be hard. Just do it, and if you're passionate about it, do it passionately. In choice, I bring this up, but there's a concept in Taoism called Wei Wei or Wu Wei, which is effortless action. If you're passionate enough about something, you should be able to start not doing it effortlessly, but you shouldn't feel like it's horrible work. And you won't mind doing it and just doing it and just slamming your head against this thing. And because you're going to do that with anything you're passionate about, with becoming good at something, you're going to smash your head on this brick. And if you're passionate about writing, it's not going to be that hard. You just need the courage to do it. Then once you've written, there's a lot of little things. Remember that prose and atmosphere are important in any story. Do not tell us like it's a set. Do not write like it's the play instructions. Write like it's a play already being performed. Tell me the sights and sounds and smells. With dialogue, every character, even if they're insane, has an internal rationale for why they should say things. Do not have characters say things because it's a plot device. Have them say it because it's what this person would say. It's what makes sense to them. And if it doesn't, it can't be in there. You cannot write it. It's not good enough. And there's a lot of dialogue written by a lot of people where they just have a difficult time grasping that. And it's hard to get a sense for that. But define your character, know who they are, and think about why they're saying it. Then a lot of it just comes down to do it, write it, get people to read it, even if it's just friends, even if it's on the internet, even if it's a small community, and get them to tell you what you think and learn from there. And then, last bit of advice would be read, watch, absorb media, learn what they did right. Think, why is this good? Why do I enjoy it? Don't stop at, it's good. And don't stop at, oh, it's because it has a lot of words in it. And just think, no, it's something more than that. It's not just that this show is very pretty to look at. It's something about what people are saying, and then analyze it and think about it. Use the information you get. Or you can be like Hannah and just be good at everything naturally without thinking about it ever, and which I will be very jealous of her amazing ability. And if you're that person, you're not asking me this question, I guess.
Question, Hannah? You mean?
Yeah.
I think I know what you mean.
Hannah, also called Momo.
Yeah. Okay. I wanted to be clear there. There was no prior build up. Some people might not know who Hannah is. Still, she's also on my list.
She's an incredible short story writer. Probably the best short story writer I have ever personally spoken to. I have not read Gold, which is her only long story, though I meant to. She writes very, very short stories on copious amounts on lots of different subjects. And she has mastered short story writing, and to the point where she doesn't even think about it. She just knows and does, and it is effortless action to her. And it's really, really cool. And I'm envious in a good way of her ability, and she's an incredible person. If you ever get a chance to talk to her, she's an amazing person.
No, but anyways, with that is going to conclude the interview portion of this video. So is there any shout outs that you would like to give, people that you'd like to say now and for certain? They will be linked in the description below. Self plugs that you want to do to anything like a Tumblr or whatever.
I don't have a Tumblr because I never felt I deserved one, if that makes any sense. Like, I don't think I produce content worth having a Tumblr for. But I would totally love to thank everyone, every single one of you that have ever given my chance to the story, even if you liked it or disliked it. And even more so to anyone who took the time, positive or negative, to tell me what they think. And to sit there and think about my story. Without you all, I could not have written that many words. I don't have it in me. I'm not that kind of elf. But it's incredible. And I want to give some more personal thank yous to people who have gone beyond that LazyKatze, who edits a choice and has been a really helpful person in terms of telling me what to do with writing and teaching me certain grammar rules. Frozenhikki, who is her criticism, and anytime you ask her anything, she will give you the most critical eye you could imagine and just rips apart every chapter. And she likes it, but she rips apart every chapter, and that has been the most helpful advice ever, and every time she's been right. Thank you to A-rav, who edits Melting Vale out of the kindness of his heart, including very late night messages when I'm at 6 in the morning and I'm just finished and need him to do it for me. And thank you to TCR, who's reviewed almost every chapter of Melting Vale, every chapter of Autumn Vale, a few of Snowy Vale, every chapter of Joyce, and edits Autumn Vale. And without him, Autumn Vale wouldn't exist. I would have canceled the story. Purely because of him. And other thank yous to everybody else, earnestly. Thank you for your time, and thank you to you, Cody, for letting me on your show and to be able to talk in general.
No problem. I need content. Listen, let's be realistic here. I need content. This is really a selfish move. Yeah, so all of those people, you will find links to their fanfiction profile and anything else that you want me to link for them. You find those in the description below. Those will be the only thing linked, and I won't link everything that was mentioned in here because I don't. But that is going to conclude this episode. I would like to thank Elfenlied for being on the show. Tune in, just in case anybody was wondering, this video came out on a Tuesday because Wednesday I'll be traveling for RTX. There will be no Cody Talks Fanfiction next week due to the fact that I'll be getting back from RTX Tuesday, leaving for a doctor's appointment on Wednesday up in Phoenix, so I won't have any time to record, edit, and release a video. But episode 15 in 2 weeks will be another author's spotlight. So tune in then to see who it is, and tune in the next time that I release a video, whenever that may be, for, yeah, something. Bye.
Bye.